So welcome to the National Coherence Creating webinar series. My name is Sue Brown. I'm on faculty at Maharishi International University and I'm connecting from the university today. So today our guest is Dr. Bevan Morris, President Emeritus of Maharishi International University. Dr. Morris will be speaking on Maharishi Mahesh Yogi's historic initiative in 1979 to establish a nationwide program for reducing national stress and creating greater harmony and coherence in the collective consciousness of the nation. Dr. Morris is originally from Australia, as I am too, but he has a truly global role in bringing knowledge of transcendental meditation to the world. He's travelled to just about every country, meeting government leaders and also sharing news and inspiration with those already practicing transcendental meditation in each city that he visits. Dr. Morris received his BA and MA from Cambridge University in England and doctorate degrees from Maharishi European Research University. He spent many years working with Maharishi in a variety of roles, serving as president of Maharishi International University for 36 years and also as chairman of the board of trustees. He continues now to serve on the board as a board member of the university. As president of MIU, Dr. Morris oversaw expansion of the university campus to the beautiful campus we have now and accreditation of MIU. He was honoured by Maharishi as Prime Minister of the global country of world peace, which Maharishi founded to represent, he said, peace-loving people everywhere. It's a country without borders, whose domain is the field of the consciousness of all of us. So I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Morris to share his account of leading the creation of the world's first permanent group of peace creators using transcendental meditation and its advanced programs. And that group was here in Fairfield, Iowa, USA. If you would like to ask Dr. Morris a question, please email your question to questions@tm.org. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Morris today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Brown. And I will share my screen. Okay. So, I was very glad to have a chance to talk with everyone. I'm here in Holland, in the house where Maharishi lived in the last 10 years of his life and administered the world movement from here. Maharishi opened the gateway of enlightenment to millions of people in the world, nearly 10 million by now, and opened the gateway also for a new age to dawn in the world. He brought the unity consciousness of his great master, Gurudev, to every corner of the world in its completeness. I think we would all agree that the US needs a great upsurge of coherence in collective consciousness right now. And it needs to be made permanent this time, not fluctuate up and down. There was another time like this, and that was 1979. And I'd like to introduce what happened at that time that led to the creation of the first permanent national superradiance group in the world and the building of the Golden Domes as its home. In 1978 and 79, my duty was traveling from country to country in the Caribbean and Northern South America, 13 countries in all, to offer the Transcendental Meditation City program. And we would fly from country to country in a little plane like this, a Cessna 210 it was. And it was one day in each country and then fly on to the next for another instruction and another instruction from country to country. I went to, in that time, 11 times to Haiti alone, and similarly to many other countries throughout the Caribbean, giving the instructions and following up with the TM City Yogic Flying Block. It was a little surprising looking back on it to be doing it that way, because we were flying in a single engine plane over the open ocean. And so next to me on my seat in the plane, there was a cardboard box with a life raft in it, just in case. It was a joy, though, to do that. That was the time also when Maharishi began to test out the idea that group practice of the TM City program could reduce violence and improve the quality of life anywhere. So there was the Ideal Society campaign, where lots of siddhas in America went to Washington State and Rhode Island, and likewise in other countries. And the World Peace Project, where many, many siddhas and teachers of transcendental meditation from the USA went to Nicaragua, to Zimbabwe and Zambia and Israel and Iran to reduce violence in those countries just by being quietly in a hotel and practicing together, enlivening the unified field and reducing negativity and increasing harmony and positivity. And this worked, except where the group was not large enough to really affect the whole country, as in the case of Iran. It was about that time also that Maharishi shifted over to a simpler way of learning the Transcendental Meditation City program. I'm sure many people on this call were part of all of this, so they could probably tell everyone some good stories as well. But at the end of 1978 was the first Center Invincibility course, where people could learn the cities in their centers and then come together for 2 weeks in many locations, in Cobb Mountain in California, at MIU, in South Fallsburg in New York, and become yogic flyers. And so even though I was in the Caribbean during that time with others, I was called to come to join CIC1 the December, January 78, 79, and then CIC2, I think it was April of 79. And I just loved to come, I just loved to come to America, the most creative country in the world, and with this amazing response of the people of America to this most advanced teaching of yogic practice in the world. So that happened. But then just a little after that, in the summer of 1979, Maharishi becomes greatly concerned about a dangerous weakness in the US national consciousness. And the danger was the clash between the US and the Soviet Union. So he called for the first great assembly of yogic flyers. Up to that time, there had been a couple of hundred here, a few hundred there. But at first, Maharishi wanted to have 6,000, because that was the square root of 1% of the world's population, which was calculated by the scientists to be enough to influence the whole world, 3.5 billion people. It's amazing. The world's population has more than doubled since then. So it was to be held starting on Guru Purnima in 1979, July the 9th, and going through to August the 20th. So I was invited to come to participate in that. And altogether, 3,000 plus siddhas attended for all or part of the 6 weeks. So this was a big assembly. And during that time, 1,100 new siddhas completed their training as siddhas. Even on the CIC number 3 flying block, as I recall it, there were 686 people who became siddhas. But the question was at that time, where to hold such a big assembly? It's not easy to find a place with that kind of accommodations and food and so forth. But just 3 days before it was to begin, it was decided to hold it. It was found to be possible to hold it at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. So this is the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Maharishi had actually been there earlier for a famous symposium on the science of creative intelligence with Bucky Fuller and all kinds of famous Nobel laureates and so forth. So here we are coming back again. So I flew up from the Caribbean to Boston, and traveling out on July the 9th to join everyone, the car I was in broke down halfway in Worcester, Massachusetts, because the person who had loaned us the car didn't know you were supposed to service cars. So the car just conked out. So I had to spend the night in Worcester. And I arrived the next day on the 10th of July. And the first thing I was told was I wasn't just there to be a TM City administrator, but I was actually now in charge of this course, which was a surprise to me. The people who were supposed to do it couldn't come, so then it was up to me. But what had happened was that because it was so late in the piece that the location had been organized, there were only a handful of staff there to try to register and house. Nearly 2,000 people had suddenly arrived on the campus on the 9th. And so what they did that night, there was just a kind of chaotic situation. So they just gave everybody a key and said, go and find a room, go and find the room and come back tomorrow. But when I arrived, I found that to register and get a room and a meal pass, there was a line, hundreds of yards long, slow moving line in the boiling July sun. And so it was a very kind of not very orderly situation. So I sent a message to Maharishi that, it's kind of chaotic here. And I got an answer back that Bevan will have to be very strong to survive in that atmosphere. So that made the situation pretty clear. So anyway, so we got going, and it was at first a challenge. There were long lines for the food, and everything was still requiring increased orderliness. And we had only a small band of people who were organizing for these over 2,000 people who had already come. But last year it was the 40th anniversary of this, and we collected some memories from that time. And here is one from Ted Weissman, that those people were working very, very hard, really day and night, deep into the night, to try to get everything functional. But what Ted says is that for those of us who had worked on projects directed by Maharishi previously, we knew that tireless, happy, fulfilled energy and alert state we were experiencing from helping in our small ways with the course came from Maharishi's attention. To our grateful joy, it was a darshan project. All we could do was enjoy. Darshan means experiencing as if Maharishi is there with us. Now, when we all started flying together, the women had some reasonable rooms, but the men were flying in a building rather ominously called the Cage. And that was actually a gymnasium where Dr. J had played his basketball when he was a student at UMass. And we opened all the doors, we opened everything, but it was so hot, I don't know if you've ever been in Massachusetts in July, but it was really hot. It was really humid. And so all of us were madly flying around in the cage on the foam, but nobody would wear a shirt, and the sweat would pour down, stream down all of us. But everyone just said that here's one experience from that, like one of the other people who wrote in. There was no air conditioning in the men's flying hall for some days, and the outside temperature went into the 90s. But I also recall the experiences. I must have been sweating like the others, but the experience of the TM and TM City program was so clear and sumptuous, I hardly noticed. It did not matter at all. Anyway, this was kind of an alarming situation. So we requested the university, for whom we were quite a lot to handle, with all the 2,000 people suddenly appearing. And they came up with some other rooms which were air conditioned. And so then we had to move the foam from the cage to the new rooms for the men, air-conditioned rooms. And Bill Stevens, who's one of our Purusha, I think in Utikashi, he says partway through the assembly, the men's flying room had to be relocated to another building located on a different part of the campus. In order to move all the foam, every man was requested to carry his own piece of foam to the new building at the end of morning program. From the vantage point of the new venue, one could see what looked like an army of ants carrying breadcrumbs stretched all the way across the campus. I think it was like half a mile long. It was particularly interesting to watch the reaction of the motorists when the column of men carrying foam began to cross a fairly busy road which ran through the campus. Anyway, we got into a more comfortable situation. Actually, the big thing that changed the atmosphere was after about 3 weeks, the CIC flying block was coming to an end. Many were continuing on the course, but it was their graduation. And it so happened we had quite a number of famous musicians on the course, like Charles Lloyd and Mike Love and Matt Gaydon and so forth. And so we had a beautiful celebration of music, all themed for our goal of creating coherence in the US national consciousness. And it was such a joyous evening. It just brought home Maharishi's principle that celebration dissolves social stress. And there was just such a wonderful, progressive, peaceful, harmonious atmosphere throughout all the rest of the weeks of the course from that moment on. It was really celebration that did it. So it was quite grand, and we really, really enjoyed ourselves being all together. It was interesting to see that, and there have been, of course, studies that have reflected on what happened to America during those 6 weeks of the course. But one thing was that President Jimmy Carter fired his entire cabinet like 4 or 5 days into the course and sort of started afresh. So that was some sort of indication. Anyway, we finally come towards the end of the course, and Maharishi is calling, and this is the group. This is the group photograph, Amherst, Mass, July 1979. And so this should be well over 2,000 people at that moment. And Maharishi called, and we had a fantastic big hall. We had to move out for a rock concert one night, but apart from that, for the whole 6 weeks, we had a beautiful, grand, air-conditioned hall. So Maharishi called, and he was in Salisbury in Switzerland, and he stayed on the phone with us for about, I think, 2.5 hours or more. And what he said was that he needed 800 people out of this group, 800 siddhas, to move immediately to Fairfield, Iowa, to join the group of 700 siddhas already at MIU, students, faculty, staff at MIU. So this was, a kind of a shock for everyone that Maharishi wanted everyone, at least 800, to move. And it was really hard to absorb, that they were to move from where they lived and their own life and join this national superradiance group. And I think most of you have heard this story, probably from me many times, but when we first counted how many, only 100 said they could go. And Maharishi said, so try again. And then after another hour, we counted again, and it was 200. And then Maharishi said in this voice that portended doom for us all, for the US and world consciousness, he said, well, then I suppose I'll just have to forget the whole thing. And at that moment, people started like crying out in the audience, no, Maharishi, no, because everyone knew that he had given this opportunity to sustain the coherence being created by this group and to safeguard the nation and prevent something very dangerous from very, very upsetting from happening. So he said, all right, then count again. So I just give you two experiences of people at that moment. That was the most dramatic moment that I ever experienced in my history in the movement, that particular following hour from that moment. Here's one of those present, says, the most dramatic moment of the Amherst course was at the very end, when at our meeting, Maharishi asked us to continue the course. At one point, Maharishi finally seemed to give up, saying, if there is nothing more that can be done, then silence fell on us with a dark feeling that we were holding the world in our hands. And this was it, as if this was it, the end. After a moment of silence, the entire auditorium was filled with a variety of sounds, crying, etc. As it passed, we were asked for another count. Immediately, I was standing with others next to me so that we could be counted. And then another person telling the same story of the same moment. As everyone there remembers, Maharishi said in a sad way, I guess it's just not possible. At that instant, the hearts of everyone, 100% committed, 80%, 50% committed, all at once burst with a large, it is possible. And all of us throwing our own highly rigid, limited sense of caution to the wind and feeling small inside for holding back as long as we had, immediately crossed the line in our minds and knew we would be going to Fairfield. The remains of the abandoned concerns would have to take care of themselves. Like that, as a group, we all got on board with Maharishi's desire and didn't ever really look back. Who could have been more fortunate? And now, from one of the Purusha Rajas, excuse me, I clearly remember sitting in the gallery with my group of 10 men when Maharishi asked us to go to Fairfield. At the time, I was working for my father in New York City, and he was already extended that I had gone to Amherst for 6 weeks. But I just felt my legs moving to stand up at Maharishi's request. And almost all of our group of 10 stood up. It was a very good feeling, moving with Maharishi's thinking on the spur of the moment. And then we just sat and enjoyed Maharishi asking you to count again as we got closer and closer to 800. And it was also, as people started donating money for other people to go and represent them there. And that was something quite new at that time that now so many people give. And then the most amazing blessings of my life came when we finally got the 800 and Maharishi was so satisfied. And then he said something like, those of you who have committed to go to MIU, I promised you the highest enlightenment. It was an astonishing statement that most of us had never heard or known Maharishi to say. I felt so grateful to be able to move with Maharishi's thinking, and the following 3 months in MIU were the most transforming period in my life. And I'll just also mention what he said after the 800 was achieved. His voice turned, and we have no tape of this, sadly. It was the most beautiful sounding voice and message you could ever imagine. It was truly the voice of the great Maharishi of the Vedic tradition speaking. And he said, all of you who have today made this commitment, you will never regret it. You will be 1,000,000 times blessed on every level. I personally guarantee this. And my friend, Dr. Eberhard Arnold, was with Maharishi in the White Room in Salisbury during these hours when Maharishi was on the phone with us. And he said that when Maharishi finally hung up, he turned and looked out the window across at Mount Shiva, the big mountain that is across Lake Lucerne there. And he didn't speak for about an hour. And everyone was really wondering, because that was very unusual. And finally, he turned back to the small group who was with him. And he said, I never promised that to anybody before. So that was it. When I returned to Salisbury from the course, I brought with me this picture that we see on the screen right now. And in Salisbury, in the Grand Assembly Hall, it still stands there proudly on the wall, right? Where Maharishi used to walk past it every time when he would come in for the meetings. When I came back, Maharishi had told me that it was like a sword was hanging by a thread over the United States at that moment. That was the thing. And it was so kind of him not to tell us, he went into some more detail of what would have happened with that incoherence in the US national consciousness. So he didn't tell us when we were doing this. So we were, just kids, let's get 800, like that. But he always just absorbed it all for us and then just got us to do what was necessary to save the situation, as he did so many, many times through all the years. And then he gave me the choice of what to do next. And one was to come to MIU and be there and eventually as a trustee and a faculty member, and to look after the 800 and the Creating Coherence program that they actually moved there. I didn't mention that. It wasn't just that they promised to move there, the 800. They moved there within 2 weeks. There were 800 people there. One of the sweet stories that came in at that time when I was asking people to give their memories from Amherst, Tony DeRusso, who's a Purusha, I think is also in Udakashi, he wrote the story, and he was the one who actually got the location and actually signed the contract with the University of Massachusetts after lots of backwards and forwards. But he said, he didn't have any money to move to Salisbury. So he, not to Salisbury, to Fairfield. And so he said, he went to the bank, local bank, and he said to the loan officer, I want to borrow $3,000 to grow and create world peace from Fairfield, Iowa. And he said the bank loan officer kind of stared at him for a while, just stared. And then finally he said, Mr. DeRusso, could you save the world for $1,500? And he said, I think I could save the world for $1,500. So the bank loaned him $1,500 so he could go and get started. One of the things that was being done at that time was, and Tony said at that time he knew the world was different when the bank was loaning for that. Maharishi also had, even while we were still in Amherst, everyone formed small groups to find a way of funding themselves, which led to what is now, a very significant, powerful business community in Fairfield. It's an economic star of Iowa, as the governor called it once. And so everyone was talking about making silk scarves or baking cookies or, different things. So when everyone went there, then they started and found a way to support themselves. And that goes on to this day. Now it's it's 41 years later. And that initial group is basically all still there doing it. But the thing is, it's not enough, obviously. We absolutely need, this is the view now of the campus, beautiful campus of MIU, much improved from 1979, looking towards the west. And right now, for a very long time, we haven't had really very high numbers practicing together. So what we really need is another wave like Amherst. We need a new wave of, there are 27,000 yogic flyers in America. If even a few thousand more of them would come and assemble and fly together, what a different destiny would be there in national life. One of the things that Maharishi said when I eventually left in September 79 from Salisbury to go and take up my role at MIU, Maharishi said, build 2 golden domes, as the home of this national superradiance community of 1500. So we got busy and we chose domes, we ordered them, not knowing how to pay for them, but we ordered them. And then the building began, we'll hear in a moment, about November the 9th, I think the actual construction began. And this is December 30th, I think it was. Maharishi came suddenly to visit Fairfield to see the construction of the Golden Dome, first Golden Dome. You can see that the triangles, most of you will have been in the dome, are up, but no roof, no walls. It was pretty cold, you know, Maharishi bare feet and all of that. But he came and he wanted to see the construction going on. And it was really a great moment for all of those who'd been working so hard to make this happen. And the thing about the construction was, it was built by Siddhas completely, yogic flyers, who are also doing their program twice a day. And it was built with incredible dedication. Right late into the night, they would stay and continue building. People would bring their cars and turn the headlights on to shine onto the construction site. And people would come out with hot chocolate and cookies, you know, late in the night while people, because everyone wanted to finish it by January the 12th. So this December 30th doesn't look very much like it's going to get finished by January 12th. But Maharishi was absolutely thrilled by this. And here he is as he was leaving to go back to Salisbury. After the few days there, he went and visited the yogic flyers who were in the field house at that time. And he met all kinds of different groups of faculty and business people. And he just, day and night, he was there looking out for everyone. So he sat there under that open structure. And I just like to, he just spoke for a few minutes, but I just thought it would be very nice if we heard that. I'm sure many of you have heard me go on and on about this a lot, but it would be, I think, a good memory for all of us to hear what Maharishi said about the golden domes and the future of the world, and how we need to take advantage of their existence again to secure a coherent national US consciousness and all positivity for all 327 million people of America.
At 3 o'clock. Sit down. Quickly, sit down. All the ministers of the world government of the age of enlightenment. Now you got this beautiful place to fly high and take the influence of coherence very high in the atmosphere, so that from the center of pure knowledge in this most creative country of the world radiates coherence and harmony to purify the whole world consciousness. It's very fortunate, the progress this university has made in evolving the package of pure knowledge year after year, and now its physical expression of success we have in this golden dome to fly high. It's very good. I deeply appreciate the structure of this beautiful dome raised by the governors of the age of enlightenment with great love and dedication, and the fruits of this tree that they have been planting day and night. I've been seeing these 3 days. All their hard and devoted labor will bear great fruits for the whole mankind to purify world consciousness. It's a very beautiful situation that the structure of pure knowledge in MIU will be creating from this dome. 1,000 governors of the age of enlightenment flying together will radiate such powerful influence of harmony and coherence that it will purify the whole world consciousness. And we'll hear the purifying influence all the world over. We'll hear in this city of Fairfield. And I'll congratulate the citizens of Fairfield that they have successfully cooperated in this beautiful platform of worldwide coherence to come up in these cornfields of Fairfield. And we must feel obligated to whosoever is controlling the weather. And this is what the collective desire of the governors of the age of enlightenment creates. Support from nature. A very beautiful demonstration of this spontaneous support from nature for what the governors of the age of enlightenment desire to do. Again, I'll congratulate for the great success of these governors of the age of enlightenment, engaged in the construction, and those who are supporting the construction from the abstract influence of coherence they were creating in the field house, morning and evening flying field house. They have also contributed a great deal to the success of this dome. And this is the first dome which will create a very powerful influence of coherence in the world consciousness. Will continue to purify world consciousness day after day and week after week and month after month and year after year, generation after generation. It's going to prove a blessing for the whole mankind. And this will be the pride of Fairfield. Good, huh? You'll soon start flying here. Jai Guru Dev.
I thought also it would be nice to hear from those who recommend your work. I'll just say it, what they mentioned. The supervisor of all the siddhas was so impressed because they weren't construction workers, they were not any way construction experts. He said, but they were amazing. They were just like professional construction workers. They were built all of this, and it was with great camaraderie and great joy. He mentioned that when they did the floor, it's 22,000 square feet of cement they had to do all in one night. And first of all, as you heard from Maharishi, the temperature rose about 40 degrees overnight, and there were storms to the north and south, but it was just very comfortable for pouring the concrete and for drying the concrete. There was a floor. That was on the 10th. That was 2 days before the 12th. And then the whole thing was actually opened on January the 12th. So 2 weeks after you heard Maharishi saying that, sitting in the open structure, the dome was inaugurated and people began to practice there. But it was, he mentioned that people would just, they worked all through the night, like he said to one person, do you know what time it is? And I said, no. I said, do you want to know? The guy said, no. And they've been up like 18, 20 hours like that. Anyway, so that I think you get the idea. And also they tell the story. I think I can stop there, but the story that they did the structural engineering, I think a governor of the Age of Enlightenment in Hawaii did it from Hawaii. And then on the 9th of November, they were able to actually begin to build, to dig and build the structure and the walls and so forth. And then, so that was November 9th, and it opened on January the 12th. So it was just over 2 months that they did it. And when the expert came to put in what they call the tension ring that goes around the top of the columns, it took him 5 days to set these, the expert from the company to set them. And he said then the rest of the building will take 2.5 months to finish from there. And the Siddhas, the rank amateur Siddha construction workers, did it in 9 days. In fact, it was mentioned by the company that it would take 2.5 years to build a dome like this. And here it was built in just 2 months. So this was one of the basic things. And of course, the next year, a second dome was built for the women. So here is the Maharishi Patanjali Golden Dome in the front, and the Bagambrini Golden Dome for the women in the back. And there's plenty of room. Now, one of the great joys of today, I should mention, is that the domes are being opened again this afternoon for the first time since March. And that, of course, is because of the pandemic. They've been closed, and people have been still doing their program as before and connecting every day by Zoom to experience call. But now finally, Raja John Hagelin, the president of MIU, feels that we are at a point where we could, with certain rules and regulations, social distancing and so forth, that we could open the dome again to a limited degree and see how it goes. So that is happening just today. And it so happens that today is also a very auspicious day in the Vedic calendar, the beginning of Sharadiya Navaratri. I hope I said that right. Okay. So anyway, as the conditions improve, we just need so many more people to come and fly. And you heard what Maharishi said, what it can do for national life. And for many people, retirement is near or is with us already. Retire into Atma, retire into the unbounded ocean of bliss, retire into unity consciousness, and make sure that all the life that we have is used for the ultimate and the greatest purpose for ourselves and for our fellow human beings. So this is the message of today. So here we see inside the dome, as it was, and the yogic flies inside the dome. We know about optimizing brain functioning, that at the moment of lifting up, the maximum EEG coherence, mind-body coordination. And again, thanks to the Settle family, particularly Howard and Alice Settle, who gave a very large amount of money over the course of several years to support, at Maharishi's inspiration, a group of it up to almost 2,000 were flying together, including over 1,000 yogic flying Vedic pundits from India. And during those few years of maximum coherence creation, once again, Raja Michael Dilbeck and Dr. Ken Kavanagh have shown that there's been a very strong change in the direction of national life, as seen in this graph about homicide and urban violent crime, and in fact, in a wide variety of measures of quality of life during those 3-4 years, when the very high level of coherence, particularly also with Vedic pundits doing yagyas. So we want to, have this. You can see it was published, and this is just what we need to do. We have a solution for the problem of violence and incoherence and disorder and disharmony and lack. Maharishi had made this point, from this chart that he published in the major military magazines, that you can't find peace or invincible defense of a nation on the level of the surface laws of nature or even subtler laws of nature. Only at the level of the unified field itself, directly enlivened, which from the level of infinite correlation spreads harmony and peace instantaneously throughout the whole collective consciousness, depending on how large the group is. This is the way. So unified field-based approach, as Raja Hegland is always explaining to us, this is the actual technology demonstrated in the world repeatedly that can actually bring peace to the human race. And, why no fulfillment? There's much more peace than there was, actually, in spite of everything else. But why not complete worldwide peace? And that's because we haven't used the technology. Those who understand it and know about it have not yet fully applied it in the world. Of course, a couple of years after this inauguration of the Dome, Maharishi took it another step, wanted to have the square root of 1% practicing together, and that happened, 8,000. The maximum number actually practicing together one evening in all the different halls, 7,830 flew together. And Maharishi drove around the campus that evening, and I asked him why were we driving around? And he said it's because it was necessary to bless the ground where first 7,000 flew together. So you can see this is a big group. And Maharishi in the Grand Assembly Hall, this building was built in 3 weeks in the middle of winter. Just a few weeks before this picture, there were just 3 old tennis courts here, and this is what was built. Beautiful stage, and Maharishi meeting for the first time, the only time I think, with about 8,000 yogic flyers and explaining to them all these principles. Here is Raja John Hagelin, who is president of Maharishi International University and head of the Transcendental Meditation Program for the United States, speaking in Maharishi's presence during those precious days in the winter. But of course, that was 3 weeks. And the predictions of improvements in world consciousness were all demonstrated and very strongly scientifically and published. But 3 weeks, it's not enough. We have to have permanency. So that's it. Maharishi, by the way, got to go into the Golden Dome. As it became later, he only had previously sat in the dome when it was an open structure, but here he is as he first arrived the first evening of the Taste of Utopia Assembly. So with this, the ability of a group of 8,000 to influence the whole world in the direction of peace was confirmed. And in fact, in the succeeding years, with more assemblies and large groups, the relationship between the US and USSR went through a quantum change and eventually brought an end to their dangerous rivalry. So what we have with us is the path to the world peace is just wide open, if we would just do it. Just do it, that's all. I just mentioned briefly, probably, I don't know if I've gone too long already, but I can't see a clock. But I would just mention that Maharishi had been doing this through all of the years. And here we see in Catalina in 1962, Catalina Island in California, he went into silence with the course when the ships carrying the nuclear missiles to Cuba were being challenged by the US Navy. And during that time, the ships turned around. Khrushchev turned the ships around and sent them back to the Soviet Union. Even when I first went to India, Maharishi was talking about, he wanted to have, even then, that was 1969, a peace battalion, a group of 1,000 people who would practice some advanced program, we didn't know what it was at that point, and would bring peace to any troubled spot in the world. Between 1971 and 1973, Maharishi trained 5,000 teachers of transcendental meditation. And though they weren't siddhas, the numbers were so large, it really just transformed the whole destiny of Spain, which had been living under a dictatorship for about more than 30 years. In Nepal, Maharishi went and taught 28,000 people transcendental meditation in 1974, and ringed China with many thousands of people meditating to air-condition China and cool down the violence of the Cultural Revolution. And it worked, and the following year was the end of that kind of extreme radical approach, and Deng Xiaoping started to take over and steer China in a different direction. In 1979, Maharishi called all the siddhas of Germany to come to Fehmarn Island in the Baltic Sea, quite near East Germany and Poland. And there was a massive snowstorm while they were all there. And it turned out that there was a great danger at that moment of invasion of Western Europe by the Warsaw Pact. But because with all the snow that suddenly fell, they couldn't move the tanks and trucks and so forth. In 1984, Maharishi sent everyone that could move to the Philippines, where there was a great incipient revolt against Ferdinand y Marcos and Imelda Marcos. And with that influence of coherence that was created there, there was a peaceful transition in the Philippines. In 1989, we were invited to Armenia to build a golden dome in the city of Leninakan, which had been destroyed by an earthquake. This is actually Yerevan, looking across to Mount Ararat, which is actually in Turkey, the famous mountain. So in Yerevan, they taught 30,000 people in 1 year. And that was transcendental meditation at that time. But then thousands also started to learn the cities. And from there, the whole program went from Armenia, which is one of the 15 Soviet republics, to Moscow, and then all over the different republics of the Soviet Union. So the light of pure consciousness entered the USSR. And at the same time, there were 7,000 Maharishi Vedic pundits flying in Maharishi Nagar in India. And 3 times they were doing the special world peace performance called Ati Rudrabhishek. And then the Berlin Wall, at that time, just actually at the very time that our group went to Yerevan, the Berlin Wall fell, the Cold War over the next couple of years ended. Mozambique is another example. The great president Joaquim Alberto Chissano Rama, he established TIPS prevention wing in the military. 18,000 soldiers learned and TM, and 3,000 learned the cities. And the enmity in the collective consciousness subsided. Crime fell. Positive economic and social trends came along, and a 5-year drought came to an end. And they've been peaceful ever since, after like 30 years of war. And you can see now it's a great shining star in Africa of improved economy through all of these years since, even though the group was not sustained because they had to integrate the rebel army into the regular army, and they didn't want to go for the cities. But nevertheless, the momentum was created. President Chissano, here he is with President Nelson Mandela. Cambodia, Samdech Chia Sim and Dr. Sue Brown and her great husband, Dr. Robert Brown, were key in this. Maharishi established Maharishi Vedic University in Cambodia. And there were students came from all over. This is in Kam Chai Mir in Prevang province. They would hitchhike, they would ride on bullock carts, they'd do anything to get there. They were homeless kids. And then they began to practice transcendental meditation. They learned the cities. and Sanskrit and Vedic literature and Maharishi Ayurveda and Khmer culture. And after several rounds of this through the 90s, the Khmer Rouge completely gave up and dissolved. Here is some pictures from the university, Ayurvedic Vaidya with the patient, one of the buildings built. And again, the results completely clear. Dr. Lee Ferguson, Dr. Anna Bonchek have published extensively to show that Cambodia was just so much improved by the foundation of Maharishi Vedic University. It went up 89 places, and it was the poorest country in the world, and it went up 89 places. Inflation, which had been horrendous, dropped to 0. Poverty dropped, and undernourishment dropped dramatically, and the child mortality and infant mortality were also dropping dramatically. And King Sihanouk said, Maharishi Vedic University is playing an important role in human resource development and in the restoration of peace throughout the country. And actually, when our faculty would go and visit the king in his palace in Phnom Penh, he would say to them, the king would say, please tell Maharishi, thank you for what you have done for my country. So this is the reality. So this is the technology. It works, it works, it works, it works. You just got to use it, you know. I'm going to use the thing. Here is we have the support very much at this election time, I'm very happy to say, for our dear and great Purusha men. This is their campus in West Virginia, and they built this from scratch starting about 10 years ago. And they have 128 rooms built according to Vastu, Vedic architecture in harmony with natural law. They built all the roads, all the infrastructure. And at the moment, some of the Purusha from Uttarkashi in the Himalayas have had to come back because with the pandemic, the Indian government is not giving new visas right now to anybody. But so the whole place is absolutely full of Purusha. And the atmosphere that is on that campus is just spectacular. So this is a great support for the upcoming election time where we want maximum coherence. And likewise, the Mother Divine group, the women's group in Livingston Manor, New York, by Lake Chandelier, beautiful lake. It's about 2.5 hours northwest of New York City. And the building on the left is an artist's impression, by the way. This is what they want to build, and not quite that big now. They want to build for 48 women to be comfortably housed in Vastu Vedic architecture rooms. And so we're working on the financing of that right now. But the other buildings are there, and you can see it's a beautiful campus in the mountains, Catskill Mountains. And they also have a very powerful influence. Their experiences are so deep in the field of Atma, in the field of Atma Vedam Sarvam. Everything is Atma. So we have the force, the power of these two groups, the men and the women's groups as well, to support us during this time. But obviously what we want to do is, if we can be moving, if we can get to live in Fairfield and Maharishi Vedic City, join in with the group on a permanent basis. You can always go somewhere else for a couple of months in the winter if you want to, but be in the group and create a completely new destiny for America. And because America, you know, its activities, its destiny is the destiny of the entire world. You know, it's just so crucial to what happens in the world. And so please think about it and build up and create every opportunity to retire there or to have business there or to study there. So many fantastic educational programs there that you can look up by going to miu.edu. One of the new ones I just show you here is the Enlightened Leadership Program. And that is a program first for undergraduates to bring students who are practicing yogic flying from all over the world and to give them scholarships. And Dr. Howard Settle, he and Alice are working diligently to create the funds. It's not there yet, but to support this program, to support hundreds or even thousands of people to round in the Golden Domes and other yogic flying halls, and to endow all of this so it will last throughout time. This is what Maharishi wanted, not just temporary, forever. Don't let this knowledge slip out of sight. But anyway, Enlightened Leadership Program is to create a new generation of young people who are highly enlightened, have masterful skills in all fields of Vedic knowledge and modern knowledge, and are ready to lead Maharishi's activities in the world and to lead their nations. Anyway, so please think about all of this. Also, there's Zoom calls that are going on. You must have received information. Practice together with everyone else on Zoom. This is really good. So our goal finally, Dr. Brown, I'm almost there. Our goal is 10,000 siddhas to live and fly together at Maharishi International University and Maharishi Vedic City to create global peace and prosperity. Even 2,000 would be good right now. We have 2,000, but 2,000 to practice together and then build it up to a city of paradise of 10,000 enlightened people with all the liveliness of all the devatas of creation, blessing everyone. At the same time, to create in India, as Maharishi planned on January the 11th, 2008, a group of 16,000 Maharishi Vedic Pandits to perform yoga, group yogic flying, and cities, and yagya at the global capital of Ram Raj in India, supported forever by the Brahmananda Saraswati Trust endowment. Maharishi wanted to create an endowment, at least $1 billion, so that a group of that size could be supported always without any financial problem or having to ask for anything. They would also be performing Maharishi Yagyas, focused on every single individual country in the world to prevent any disaster arising anywhere in the world. This was Maharishi's point, along with the 16,000 practicing yogic flying together. He said this will also be essential to preserving the purity of the teaching through time, to have such a group, because then the world coherence will be so high, nobody will ever go for partial or limited knowledge, only the very best. So this is where the Brahmastan, where the 16,000 group is being built. It's about 2,000 strong right now. We see this group. This is the campus. And this is where people stay from all over the world when they come there. And this was the final plan Maharishi laid out for the all of the different elements required for an incredible powerhouse place to spread peace in the world and harmony and unity in the world forever. So, and also Maharishi always emphasized, as we are emphasizing for the USA, that every country needs a permanent peace-creating group of yogic flyers. And that's true, rising very much in Latin America particularly, and in Nepal, and in India increasingly, and in Bali, and in Thailand. These groups are coming up now, so to have them everywhere in every aspect of life. And to build a place which is the home of the knowledge and the home of creating coherence in every country. This is one that was designed for the banks of the Ganges in Varanasi in India. And for this, prevention of all war forever, prevent the birth of any enemy to the nation. So we never have to fight, we don't have to have the kids fighting ever again and dying for the country. No more war. Maharishi actually made a further plan for 300,000 Maharishi Vedic Pandits looking after all the nations of the world. But I won't go into all of that today, but he wanted ultimately for the endowment to provide at least $1 billion a year for 300,000 professional peace creators in all parts of India. Maharishi took out advertisements in the major military magazines like Jane's magazine, and amazingly bold, challenged all of those people selling armaments For example, with this, he said, killing is sin. Decide if you want to be a sinner or a savior. Destructive defense, better keep away from it. Favoring life, saving life. Maharishi's Vedic technology of defense. And he said in another of those advertisements, let us value life, the precious creation of God. Protect the life of others and gracefully defend yourself. When Maharishi was saying goodbye to the world, he made it clear the theme that was his 53 years of service to his master Gurudev and service to the human race. He said in saying goodbye, it has been my pleasure at the feet of Gurudev to take the light of Gurudev and pass it on in my environment. Now today I am closing my design duty to Gurudev, and I can only say, live long the world in peace, happiness, prosperity, and freedom from suffering. If you want to go into all of this more, I recommend the book of Dr. Craig Pearson, which you can get from the MIU Press, the complete book of yogic flying. Also, a new book that has just come out by Dr. Wallace, J. Marcus, and Dr. Clark, with a foreword by Dr. Tony Nader, who is the leader of the Worldwide Transcendental Meditation Movement, and who will be speaking at this time next week, called The Coherence Effect, tapping into the laws of nature that govern health, happiness, and higher brain functioning. So there it is, yes. And then another book, An Antidote to Violence, Evaluating the Evidence by Barry Spivak and Patricia Saunders, with an introduction by Dr. Hagelin, president of the Global Union of Scientists for Peace. And this examines all the more than 50 studies of the field effect of consciousness, the Maharishi effect, like the Taste of Utopia, for example, and goes into deep analysis of the scientific methods used to establish that it really is the group that creates the effect. So this is another book. I think this is available from MIU Press, but I think these books are also available on Amazon. And also, I just mentioned to everyone that Dr. Sue Brown, with her team, has created a new version of The Science of Being and Art of Living, which was Maharishi's very first book in 1962. And it'll be a beautiful book, complementary to the beautiful version of Bhagavad Gita that they also prepared a couple of years ago. It's The Science of Being and Art of Living as it was originally dictated by Maharishi, but it also includes many supplementary materials that Maharishi asked to be added, like update of all the scientific research and all the developments of knowledge that have happened since Maharishi did that, which are a vast range of developments of knowledge. The discovery of Dr. Nader about human physiology as the same as the laws of nature that run the universe, the Ved. All of this are beautiful, and references for an index so you can look up anything, a very detailed table of contents so it's easy to find things. So this will be a great book to have. It's being printed as we speak, and it'll be available from MIU Press very soon. One of the great things about it is that now this is published by MIU. Up to now, Penguin has been only publishing it, not doing that great a job, even though I believe more than 1 million copies were sold over the years. But now we have a beautiful version of the absolute highest standard, and it's a gold mine. It's a treasure house of all the most beautiful, deep wisdom of Maharishi for the ages. So we really thank Maharishi and Gurudev for all of these gifts of knowledge. And again, I just feel we must make hay while the sun shines, as Maharishi used to say. Use all this knowledge and put an end to all war and poverty and suffering on the planet Earth. So back to you, Dr. Brown. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morris. That was such an expansive and beautiful insight into how Maharishi, in founding Transcendental Meditation and all its advanced programs, was always thinking of the whole world. Although the Transcendental Meditation technique is for the individual and for the individual benefit, we're all contributing to the peace of the world as a whole, even if we're meditating on our own at home. And then with practice of the advanced TM City program, including what Dr. Morris was referring to as yogic flying, we also increase that effect that we can have from the world. And I think you also gave insight into how the TM teachers of the times, who Maharishi referred to as governors of the Age of Enlightenment, were ready to be mobilized to help create world peace and help create a group that would do that. As meditators now are increasingly coming together via Zoom to practice their meditation in a group and experiencing the profound benefits of that, of how much deeper our meditation can be when we join in a group. The talk by Dr. Nader that Dr. Morris mentioned is next Saturday at 11 a.m, this same time and same channel. There'll be emails sent out about it. And Dr. Nader will be talking about the Enlightened Leadership program that Dr. Morris introduced today. Also, there are some webinars tomorrow, if you would like to join them. At 11 a.m. tomorrow, there will be a webinar with Tom Newmark, a wonderful speaker. He spoke for our commencement celebration last year. He's former CEO of New Chapter, the chairman of the Greenpeace Fund USA and Sacred Seeds. The title of his talk is What Tastes Great and Reverses Climate Change? Eating as an Act of Radical Regeneration. Sounds fascinating. So again, that's tomorrow at 11. And then tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Time, the guest is Donna Hauser, that's at TM Talks, a top corporate executive with Christian Dior and a consultant on the benefits of the Transcendental Meditation program for today's working women. The title of her talk will be Saving Your Sanity While Enhancing Your Happiness. You can find the link to this talk by visiting the website tmevents.org. So that will be tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central. So thank you all very much for joining us today. There wasn't time to answer some of the questions that have come in, but I think we had such a comprehensive overview of the amazing range of programs that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi inaugurated and that Dr. Bevan Morris did so much to advance and bring success to, and that many people who learned TM many years ago and then learned the TM City program have contributed to over the years. So thank you again, Dr. Morris, and thank you to everyone for joining. All the best.